Now, to get us started with the program, it's my pleasure to introduce you to our opening keynote speaker, who happens to be a colleague of mine and a friend that I've known for many years, and I've heard her speak many times. And let me just tell you this. Get your pen and get your pad of paper ready, because she has a lot of information, and you're going to want to know it, and she's going to be just filling your head with a lot of good stuff. So Elizabeth Edwards is the gal. She is a communication scientist and strategist at the forefront of the behavioral communication and ethical AI movement. As founder of Volume PR and Engagement Science Lab, Elizabeth integrates insights from the physical, natural, life, and social sciences to revolutionize how businesses communicate, market, and influence.
Are we excited to talk about AI and learn some new things this morning? We're going to have some fun. So, everybody been hearing a ton of information about AI. Why are we all talking about AI so much all of a sudden? Does anybody feel like it's everywhere and you're hearing about it constantly now? So what's different? Why are we talking about AI? Well, back in the 80s, there was this cartoon called The Jetsons. Anybody ever watch The Jetsons? Hey, yeah, loved it, right? This was our favorite back in the 80s. And there was a robot in this show called The Jetsons that imagined what life was like in our future, what life might be like in the ages that we are in now. And there was a robot on the show named Rosie. And I think every woman and mother in the world wants a Rosie, because she runs around your house and cleans and does everything that you need. But why am I talking about Rosie right now is because I think the simplest way for us to understand where we are with technology and AI is that we crossed the threshold where we can talk to our computers and they talk back to us, just like Rosie did. Like, there's an episode, I've been making my kids watch some Jetsons lately, and there's an episode where the teenage daughter comes in and she's stressed out with homework, and Rosie says, "Oh, give me those." And she eats all of the books and says, "I'll be ready to give you help, tutor you on your homework in an hour." And she leaves, right? Where we are right now is that we have a Rosie that already knows all of that. She doesn't need to ingest anything to learn anything. And pretty much any question, we're going to show some questions, but really anything you can imagine and wonder and want to know, your AI can help you find out. Now, when we're talking about tech, it can get really lots of big words and techie words, and I'm not going to do that to you today. I just want, at the beginning, there's only 2 slides with some tech language to get us oriented around things. And then we'll leave all this tech jargon. But some of the words for you to understand, what really is artificial intelligence? It's the machines that can mimic human intelligence, where they are so smart, they seem as if they're human. You can have a conversation with them like you would chat with Rosie, and it's going to be really natural. And part of how that's able to happen is because of technology called machine learning. Our machines are able to learn. We don't have to give them explicit programming that says when A happens and then B happens, you do C. Because they're built now with more of this what's called a neural network type of an approach. So if I say to my AI, if I say to my computer, "Hey, you got this wrong, don't do that again," it learns, and it's going to change its behavior to not make that mistake again. And our computers before weren't that dynamic. They couldn't interact with us that way. If you've been using voice assistants, they're a good example of a more coded and in a box kind of AI, where I can't talk to Alexa or Siri and tell them to do more dynamic things or load multiple things at a time. They just say they don't know what I'm talking about, right? But this kind of AI really can do that. Now, another thing I think is important to really help us feel more calm around AI, because some folks are kind of nervous about this. Let's calm ourselves down by first realizing we have been working with AI for a long time. It is not even kind of new. Spam filters, those are using forms of AI to help classify and recognize patterns. Anybody like predictive text, where you start typing hi and it gives you that next little bit? That's an example of artificial intelligence. Our voice assistants are an earlier kind of form. But even things like fraud detection, where it's looking at patterns relative to known behavior and being able to make kind of judgment calls and saying, this doesn't look right from a pattern recognition perspective. So we've had these types of things present in business and in our life. What really changed and how we now have Rosie as your last tech tool term page here is what's called natural language processing, or NLP. That's the way that these machines are able to process language in a more natural way. And because of all the terms we saw before and NLP, we now have what are called large language models. And there's a few, some that are way better than others, and we'll share that with you today. What are the large language models, and how do we work with them? How do we talk to them? Do I talk to them like my 9-year-old? Do I talk to them like they are a scientist? How do I talk to these large language models so that we have a great conversation and I get whatever it is that I'm needing or wanting? All right. Why am I the one here talking to you about this today? So Anne was so kind to give such a great introduction. I want to share a little bit more framework as well as to why am I the person here talking to you about AI. I own a public relations agency called Volume PR and Engagement Science Lab, where we're really looking at the intersection of science and communication and technology and how we just help all of it work and be better. And I've really been passionate about AI's role in that. I have been so focused on this industry for a really long time. Does anybody remember who this is? Clippy. So this is Clippy. He was the Microsoft Office assistant, one of our early kind of interacted with us sort of like it was AI. And when you used to work in Microsoft Office, Clippy would pop up and chat with you and give you suggestions of how you may want to format this document or something. Clippy was one of my first clients in the late 90s, created by J.B. Holston of NetSage. The first coverage that we got for Clippy was on the cover of the circuit section of the New York Times, September 22nd, 1999, where Peter Lewis from the New York Times is explaining to people there's this new thing out there where robots help give you suggestions, and we call them bots in little quotes. They're going to be called bots. This is what's coming, right? And so some of us and my team and I have really been working on explaining to the world what bots are and how this whole technology works for longer than I'm going to let you believe I am years old, okay? So that's why I'm here and why I have such a passion to talk to you about how we see AI for what it really is and how we want to use it, okay? So in tech, one of the things that we often do is we measure things based on how long it takes to get to 100 million users. That's one of the milestone lines of, is something really successful? How long does it take to get to 100 million users? And I want you to see here, the internet itself was 7 years. Facebook, 4.5, Instagram, 2.5. ChatGPT was at 100 million users in 2 months. 2 months for a brand new product to have essentially 30% of the entire US population, number-wise, as its customer. The point here is that it is here, and it is here to stay. It is not something for us to fear. It is something for us to manage, but it is very much here. Let's look at how are people using it and who really is using it. We're seeing about 40% of adults. You can see kind of the breakdown here of there are a significant amount of the population when you consider how brand new this is, brand new for everyone, that are already using these generative AI tools I'm going to teach you about every single day in their work. The kind of things that we are using AI most commonly for. Really, we can use it for an endless array of things. Anything you can think to ask, you can ask your AI and start to get really powerful support. A lot of what people are using it mainly on this chart here, it's answering questions. Just any question you might ask. Because before, if you had a question, what would we do? We'd go to Google and we would type in that sentence, or we would put in a couple different keywords, right? We are all ninjas, I would bet, on how to use Google to find lists of sources, okay? But what's different now? We go and we ask a question, and it used to drive me crazy when people who weren't strong on the internet would go and Google and ask a question. It's like, no, you're not coding that question right. It doesn't have the right words for the Google engine to be able to give you the answer that you really need, right? Well, that's what's changed now. We go in and we ask the question and load your question up. Don't just ask, What's a nice bakery in town? What's a nice bakery in town that has the highest reviews for pan chocolates? Like, what do you want? Get real specific. Yeah, that's a good one, isn't it? It's like, what do you want? And load and add up all those different ingredients that might be in your question, and you can get such richer answers. Brainstorming. I'm going to show you a lot of asking questions and brainstorming with AI today, but this is one of the places where we have some of the most fun, and we laugh so much. Do you guys laugh a lot at work? We don't laugh as much as I would like, but since we've started using AI to help us with brainstorming and coming up with puns for social media or so many different things, it's really fascinating how a lot of things that you might only be thinking about and looking at from your seat in the world, and where you've been all this time, how it can kind of break us free to start seeing things in different ways. Creating photos, music, video. I'm not going to show us any of this today because we don't have time to get into all of it. We have some of them in the workshop after the keynote. But what we can create, photo, video, even music-wise. I was talking to a woman this morning who is Hmong, and she was telling me how much she loves how AI wrote this song that's all about her culture and like the words that they used, how it's the funniest thing. No artist ever created something like it, and it's become her favorite song because someone used AI to say, hey, put these things together and help create lyrics around this. I've started writing my kids songs to motivate them to clean the kitchen or do whatever, because I could say, write a rap about you're being a filthy slob and I can't take, mom's gonna lose it, right? And then just start riffing. Like, you can really engage in so many different ways. So when you hear creating music, creating imagery, really think about now these are tools that you couldn't pull that tool. You couldn't write a song for somebody without that being a huge amount of work. Now you maybe can have a song in 30 seconds, right? This is what AI is so powerful for. So many uses. So many uses. And then what industries are adopting AI the most? There's a lot of charts I could have put up here that show the exact percentages in every industry. The fact is, it is everywhere. It is in blue-collar work. It is across white-collar work. But where the impact is going to be felt the most is in what we call knowledge work. Those of us who are knowledge workers, who work with data, work with information, used to crunching, a lot of that, and especially a lot of that involves words, which is why you see marketing and advertising, and there's a PR person up here as the one talking to you about how we're using this, is because it is the difference of, can you imagine if you were a mathematician and you were alive the day the calculator was created? What was your life like as a mathematician the day before versus the day after a calculator? That's us today. That's where we are right now. AI is our word, thinking, and strategy calculator. It's a tool. It's not a literal human brain. It's not sentient. It can't do the things that we can do. But it is the equivalent of being a mathematician without a calculator versus one with. And the biggest gift you can give yourselves is to really let that point sink in and start thinking, if I have a thinking and word calculator in my pocket now all the time, how do I use it? What questions do I ask it? How does that benefit my business? And that's what we're going to go through some more examples of today. Now, why? What is the objective behind most companies in the way that they are implementing their AI? First, of course, we see the majority of, you can see those numbers down there, the furthest measure is about 35%. So we've got just over 30% of folks in business using it to reduce cost, right? This is, of course, at its core, very helpful in cost reduction, but the other areas are really where we're focused on, and where I'm gonna focus you on the most today is how are we creating new business? How are we increasing revenue from what we already have in place, and where are we increasing value? Value for our customers. How do we use these tools? If I could, with all of my resources, I could serve my customer to here before. Wow, now I've got this incredible team of AI apprentice agents. Can I serve my customer to here now? Same customer, same price point. What am I giving them? And that's why us marketing and comms people are the ones using this the most, is because what you can do in a value perspective and how you can work with your customers is one of the things that's changed the most already today. Now, the first thing I want you to see, because I'm talking about it and maybe it makes sense. Has anybody played with generative AI to have it start writing your content for you much? Only a few hands. So let's take a look and see what that really looks like, okay? So before I hit play on this video, what you're about to see is a tool called Gamma, G-A-M-M-A. Gamma is for creating presentations. Now, y'all know how long it takes to create a pretty presentation, right? It's a long time. But we don't create presentations the same way anymore at all. And I'm a presentation perfectionist, guys, okay? So the way we make presentations now is we create a super detailed outline. And not a messy outline. I mean an outline where every word is right, every piece is intentional. It's exactly how we want that to look. Exactly how this whole presentation is going to flow. And then are you ready to see what AI does with that? So this is AI taking our outline and writing all of the words for us, putting them into tables, into charts, figuring out what that data needs to be represented right, taking all of our language, and we have 30 slides, templated, custom to what we're talking about, ready to go edit. It's pretty incredible when you can organize your thinking and your material and let these tools that are trained in their own little super strength skills like presentation development here, create something where this presentation still took a considerable amount of time. Don't get me wrong, but it is a completely different process when we can go from an outline to 30-slide draft with the content there ready for me to edit within it in 30 seconds. The number one thing I hear is that people are really afraid that AI is going to replace you. And I really have some good news on that. AI is incapable of replacing a human. It is not going to replace you. But I think this quote from one of the professors at UC Santa Cruz is really important for us to understand. AI is going to act like this kind of polymathic research assistant to help you with anything and everything. A polymath is someone who's really expert in multiple fields, right? Normally we are specialists in this world. Someone gets a degree in economics and a PhD in economics, they're gonna stay focused in economics. And then if someone studies behavioral science, that's who they are as a behavioral scientist. How do we get all these different fields and bring them all together in this polymath kind of way of the person who knows everything about economics and the person who knows everything about science and the person who knows everything about comms, they're all thinking with one brain. And that's what we're able to do here, and why I want to teach you today some of how to ask questions differently and wonder and engage in different ways because of how and what data banks it has to draw from to be able to help you. So let's think about kind of getting organized here, because there are so many tools and so many places where AI can help you. We like to look at what we call the AR hierarchy of help. Okay, how do we get help and where do we start, and then what builds on top of that? So for the first level of what really helps you the most, I think, are to look at tools that lift what we call at that base level, our mental load. Just like Maslow's hierarchy of needs. You guys remember that from like Psych 101, right? At the very bottom is like shelter and food and water. Like you can't care about your nails when you don't have food and water, okay? Like nails way higher on the actualization chart. Same thing here. I don't want you to be thinking so super high about what am I doing to create content. Maybe the first thing to think about is, how am I supporting my mental load? Okay, everybody know what mental load is? Is that our brain can only handle so much information and so many tasks at once before we start to get fatigued. We get tired, we get overwhelmed, and then the mind starts to shut down and not make as smart of decisions. right? You see this so much in, just think of any time when you get overwhelmed and then another person asks a question and another person asks a question and next thing you know, you're screaming like, get away from me, right? This is mental load and like a really is something that is pervasive and hard on a lot of us, how many things we are juggling. But what's really exciting here is that that's one of the things that AI automates and takes off of our plate, where you could have a significant difference in your personal, individual feeling of processing mental load within a week of onboarding some different AI tools and processes. Then we go up and it's questions. And we organize these in thinking about specialist questions that right now you may go call a specialist, or you may go to a specialist's website. I'm a PR comms person. I get a lot of PR comms specialist type questions, right? And then there are questions that are unaskable. This is really fun. Like, I can't tell you how excited I am to show some of this to you and to hopefully light a fire in your belly to start thinking about what it means to ask unaskable questions and what those are for you and your business and your life. And we'll look at some of those. And then finally, creation support. There's a tool called Otter.ai. And one of the fields in this mental load world is around taking notes. Now, who has ever been in a meeting? Okay, who has ever had to take notes in a meeting? Okay, what happens when you're taking notes? Do you notice that your brain isn't able to hear what the people are saying as much anymore because you're writing your thinking down, right? Now, what would happen for your brain process if during that entire interview there was an AI assistant in the background that was recording every single word and was creating a complete transcript of every single word? And you could even have that transcript up on your screen playing real time while you're in your Zoom or while you are wherever. And then instead of having to take a note about what Dan just said, I'm adding a little comment on top of what Dan just said about the action that I want to take, the things that were only in my head. I'm now layering that on top of a transcript rather than trying to capture what was there in the first place. Or here, let's say you come a little late to the meeting. What you're seeing here, if you can't read these words, is someone says, I'm late to the meeting. What has been discussed so far? And the Otter assistant is saying, here's what happened. Charlie announced this. Charlie discussed this. Fen said this is happening. So you can get an update, be able to see where you are in the meeting. And then at the end of the meeting, it produces a summary and all the action items and the tasks and everything that was discussed. It's not perfect. It definitely makes some mistakes and it gets some things wrong. But do you know how many hours this saves us from every single meeting? And it's not just the time saving. Like, that's the most obvious benefit. But what has been, after using this now for over a year, what is the most profound difference for me and my team and our clients is that we are present now. We aren't taking notes. I am not worried about making sure that really smart thing that you just said and the way you said it, that I got that, because I really want to use that in my notes later, and I'm frantically writing that down while you just went and said something else. I am just fully present. And so we build and we iterate and we ideate and create in those meetings and in those conversations completely differently because nobody is worried about capturing notes. Here's the other unexpected and beautiful benefit I want you to start thinking about. AI works with knowledge, okay, what we call knowledge sets. Many of our companies don't have audio knowledge sets that are very deep. If you've been running a podcast, you've got a lot of them, right? Every podcast episode is a piece of knowledge in audio. You want to be able to train your AI eventually to understand you, your voice, your business, things like that. If you make it your new protocol that your AI assistant is on every call, you will start to build a library of all the different things that you've been talking about that are really smart or really interesting or could create a new product. We had an executive this year who had done some media briefings, and our Otter assistant recorded it. It auto joins any Zoom, so we don't even have to add it anymore. It just automatically shows up. And when it came time to launch the product that she was briefing some media about, she was having a health crisis, and she couldn't talk to media at all. There was no one available to do any of the interviews. But because we had had this Otter transcript, We were able to take that audio and create a fully produced presentation, launching the product, explaining everything about it, because we recorded this audio from her and it was there living in our archives as a workable data set. So really think about whatever your business may be, what would it do for you if you had an audio reference, a full searchable transcript by keyword, by name, of every conversation you ever had with anyone? Maybe you might notice, hey, I've created a whole process or a different way of doing things, and I can load 30 of these files into AI and say, pull out everything that Tom is saying in here that's unique and put it into a blog post outline of what that would look like. And this is where you start to get content and material related to your own thinking and your own way of doing things without having to create and start from scratch. Pretty cool, huh? So AI to lighten our mental load, there's so many ways that we can use it for that, but really I want you to think about how do you use it to help you with decisions? Any of the decisions that you have to make, whether they're grave and highly consequential or lightweight decisions, they're all still adding load to your physicality. So how do we really do that? Health and wellness, financial management, time focus, anything you can really think of that is like, oh, I gotta go do that, or I gotta go figure that out. Anytime that process goes through your head, maybe ask AI instead, what are ways to use AI to reduce my mental load around this task? How do I reduce my mental load? And ask it that specifically. What are ways to reduce mental load for an accounting business using AI tools? And it will create a chart for you for every single department and what the things are that get automated for those. So really think about that for yourself, for your teams. It's kind of that first order of business. Because as our brains get lighter and freer, then we're able to create so much more of the fun things I'm going to show you to create. But I got to show you one other example here on the heavy mental load on like a personal side. Is anybody married? What is the heaviest ongoing mental load question in a marriage? Yes! Come to my workshop, I'll give you a prize. I hate this question. It's so exhausting and it shows up every single day. This question is there for me so faithfully. But now we have AI meal planning tools. So Ollie, this little meal planning tool, what's so nice about this is that before I could only put myself in boxes. Okay, patterns that it could recognize, but I had to fit in, I'm in this little square, and then it's gonna figure that out about me, and then from this square, it's gonna figure out some stuff about me, and then this square, right? And it figures those things about me to give me something. But now we can talk like Rosie. So I can tell it, oh, I did an elimination diet called AIP, and now I can eat almost everything, but I still stay away from nightshade, sunflower, cashew, and dairy, like rando combinations of stuff, right? And it says, this is great, here's some of these recipes, here's how it all fits for you, but I can keep talking back and forth. No, I don't even use ghee, you have to take that out, or I don't use this, or I really love asparagus instead of broccoli. Like whatever you want to have as a conversation. My kid's a super picky eater and hates pasta. What do you want to tell it? And then you get a truly customized to you at a completely different level menu and meal plan. I got chills the first time I saw the menu plan it gave me because it was truly so on point. And literally nothing is on point with the specific restrictions and things that I have. So this was life-changing of answering the question, what's for dinner? It really is exhausting. It is part of the load. So think, don't judge yourself for what adds load to you. Just start noticing, what are the questions I am tired of answering, or the repetitious things I am tired of doing, or I kind of feel it making me a little more sleepy, a little more weighted down, because maybe AI can then free me from that some more. All right, the other area is now specialist consultant, right? We're gonna start using AI to ask the questions we used to ask of specialists. Ann and I are in a network where we share IT support. If you're in IT, don't get mad at me for what I'm about to say. We really need you still, but I don't need you guys in the same way that I used to. So Ann and I used to share this IT resource. We have let it go. It was a $500 a year cost because we used that particular IT resource to ask questions that we couldn't figure out on our own. Like, it wasn't worth my budget to have a teammate try to figure out how to do sometimes even simple things that they weren't able to figure out. Like this question here is, how do I let Safari on my Mac have access to open my MacBook camera? Right, that should be a pretty simple kind of thing, but the first Google search, we couldn't find it out. So we used to go to our IT chat and ask them what we do. Now we ask AI, and I know this is a little hard to read, but I wanted to show the whole thing just so you can see how you get served information very differently, but how it's giving us step-by-step of exactly what to do, and then it has shortened the sources there for us so we can still click on each of those results that you would previously see from a Google search or whatnot, but a step-by-step, just like our IT guy would have given us, is now there for us to follow. And this has made such a difference in our business that just Q&A level of IT support, we no longer have that in the budget because we don't need it. We can work with our IT folks for bigger, more complex build solution type things, not bothering them with these little mini questions anymore. Some of the other specialist things, travel planning, personal development, really, the limit is just only on you and how you can think about what you want your AI to do. I was in Europe unexpectedly this summer with my kids, and we ended up extending and staying for 9 weeks, and I could never have done that if I didn't have AI. But I was able to go to AI and ask it all kinds of questions of, where do I go for this, or what do I do for this, or how do I translate this, and anything that I needed to know that would have been incredibly complicated to figure out before, or unfigure-outable before, or only figure-outable with a great expense to a specialist, all the answers were there in my pocket. And personal development, suggesting strategies for tailored growth. I'm going to show you some examples of that here in a minute. But first, let's talk about business. This is a business conference, right? So let's start thinking and look at a few more business-type examples. What are some of the questions you can start asking? You might be hearing a lot of people talking about prompt engineering. Part of what I'm showing you are prompts, pre-engineered prompts, or the types of questions to start asking that will be very beneficial for you as someone in business to start asking your AI. So, what product features can I highlight to increase a sale in a recession? How can I create an interactive marketing campaign that feels like a game instead of an ad? What can I add to my podcast to surprise and delight listeners in every episode, and then load that with what type of listeners you are, what kind of podcasts you have, upload your library of what you've already been doing, and see what kind of rich comes from that. How can I create a viral challenge or trends that align with my brand's values? Do you ask yourself these types of questions right now? Are these the kinds of questions that your business even asks? And that, I'm not saying that with judgment, by the way, because a lot of us, we are so busy with the job of the day that we don't have time to sometimes do next order thinking or even more creative ways of looking at this problem and thinking I can brainstorm with a polymathic savant about how to solve recession issues and create more intelligent content. There's so much that we don't typically even think is within the purview of capability that now is. Like, we couldn't ask what's the most unconventional use of our product that could appeal to a niche market. You will be amazed how valuable the information is that it really gives you. How could we redesign our customer experience if it were a theme park attraction? What could we learn from luxury brands to create a limited edition version of our product? What unexpected industry could our company pivot to using 80% of our existing customers? So I know we got a lot of accounting and bookkeeping and financial professionals here today, right? How can an accounting firm create more creative content? Well, one idea, an email style series, a choose your own adventure style email series where people go through fictional challenges, fictional problems, and you get to vote and have key decision making of what's going to happen to this character in this email, and then we check in next week to see what keeps happening to this character from your company. You know how many hundreds of thousands of dollars something like that would have taken in a pre-AI world to even, we wouldn't have thought about doing it because it's not budget, it's not even close to being possible with budget, so we're not even going to think there. And now you don't need to be constrained by those types of things. You can really think anywhere. You could create something like a choose your own adventure newsletter style with interactivity, because creating an A outcome where it shows they chose A versus they chose B is literally a 2-minute difference in time and in editing power. Financial health challenge. How do we create a financial fitness challenge to get customers to be more attuned in their bookkeeping or accounting, and getting them to do different things, because AI can analyze all of this anonymized financial data to create and track progress reports and all of these different things that before you wouldn't have even thought about doing that, because you know how much work it is for yourself and all of your team members to do any of that work, so we aren't even going to go there. A virtual financial escape room. These are all ideas that AI came up with on the first pass of asking it to come up with some creative ways for an accounting firm to connect with its customers. So imagine a virtual escape room game where people can solve financial puzzles to escape from things like the tax time trap or the audit abyss, right? Now, maybe some of these things feel gimmicky to you. I want you to think of if you're a customer shopping for a new financial planning firm, and you go to a website that looks like it was built in 2010, or you go to a website that has these interactive games for you and has this little representative agent that is the online agent for this, or has these newsletters, or has ebooks, and has online courses, and has all this material to serve you. And when I started, I said a big part of what we're here to do today is change the way we bring value to our customers. That's a big part of what AI is going to disrupt in this world. It's not just how we do business, but are we using AI just to save ourselves money, just to keep more in our pocket? Or are we using it to create more value for our teams and our company and our customers? Because the people who focus on using it to create more value, to create richer, interactive ways of working with people, those are the folks that are going to win in this world of AI. But here's something I want to kind of caution you about. So here's another example that AI gave. Create an interactive finance mythbuster video, right? Where it's, here's this myth, and then we talk about and evolve the script on how we solve that. Now, I included this example because I'm not here today to focus on all of the risks and the dangers around AI. That's a whole other presentation. But one that I really do want to orient us all around from day one is bias. We all know what bias is. And there are many different laws, heuristics, effects. You heard talked, I really focus at this intersection of behavioral science and communication practices. And when you study that intersection, you learn a lot of things that AI is not trained on yet. And one of the things we know in behavioral sciences and really high-stakes communication is that if you state myths to people, you make the myth more believable. So don't do that. Don't do this. Don't do what it is suggesting here. Don't create a communication campaign that says, let me tell you the myths around this and then how I'm different. The mind, in a couple of weeks, is only going to remember the myths. That's that cognitive load, mental load stuff. The way that it ends up working, we know from the sciences, is people remember the myth statements, not the true statements. So this is not a smart way to teach people. And this is part of where we're moving in the world of professional development, is for us to understand these higher order dynamics that AI is not familiar with, so that we're the ones to be able to go through the outputs, say we're going to do this one, and we're going to do this one, and we're not going to do this one, because we know that that's actually going to create bias or create feedback loops or interfere with understanding, because I, as the master of AI, have a higher order understanding of what it does, and I'm not going to let it do things like this that can actually hurt my business. And I want to play one example. It's kind of touchy-feely for a second around the concept of personal development. Cedric Thompson Jr. is a former NFL player who's creating some really great content about kind of closing gaps in marriage and in relationships. And I came across this video, and I really debated sharing it with you guys, but I want to include this because I think it's natural for us to all think about, I'm at a business conference and I'm using this tool, right? And how am I using tools for business versus thinking about how you could possibly use AI like this. quality of the life in his home, the quality of his marriage, not using money for a therapist. Not saying he's not going to a therapist, but not only working on emotional and intellectual development in the context of therapy is how can I learn new things? I'm feeling a lot of feelings. What are my feelings, ChatGPT? Help me sort this out. I know I'm with the 80s crowd. We weren't allowed to feel our feelings when we were kids. And like now, we are supposed to make them feel their feelings. And that's kind of hard to navigate sometimes. So you can ask AI about how do I let my kid feel this feeling and I not feel horrible for letting them do it? How do I process what I'm really going through? How do I be present? What are any of these questions? Its limits really truly are only in how you think about talking to it and what you ask it. So let's spend a few minutes on what are unaskable questions. And my goal here is that I just hopefully light a little bit of a fire in you to start thinking more broadly and realizing things that maybe you wouldn't have wondered before that you can. So things that are really complex. Think about multi-layered, like not just what's a good bakery, but a good bakery with pan chocolates, and they have a garden that you can sit in that is known to have good smelling flowers this time of year, okay? There's 4 different things. You wouldn't have even wondered it before, but now you can. So what are those kind of complex queries that integrate a lot of different data and possibly maybe asking it to help you also with recognizing patterns that you maybe weren't able to see on your own? So here's a fun one. Anybody like karaoke? Okay, so I told it, create a table of artists and songs from the 1950s to 2000s in the same vocal range and valence as Oletta Jones' Get Here for a female alto singer. Could you have ever asked something like that on Google? No, the only way you're going to get an answer from Google on something like that is if somebody wrote an article about that, like if that was a thing. But now you can get the AI started in helping you think that. And if you're a budding karaoke singer, you now have a whole bunch of new artists that are in your vocal range and has that same kind of emotional resonance. But the person asking that question had to know the word valence. That's the thing. The way that we're asking the questions, you gotta have a really good command of English language, and the more that you do, and the more you use those big $5 words that for a long time we've been told not to use as much because it makes you sound too intellectual and different, yeah, use them here, okay? Because it really helps you steer it to where you really wanna go. We were in Italy, we were looking for something, and I typed, it finally occurred to me to say, no, all the places it was giving me, they weren't right because they weren't decorated right. It was venues. And I said, it needs to be quintessential Tuscan. And as soon as I put in quintessential Tuscan, oh, every result was not decorated in modern form. It was all the venues that were exactly the kind of venues that we needed, right? How about act like a Gen Z social media manager and create a table writing pun joke posts to help the social media profile of a Sacramento shoe store go viral, okay? Now, again, how would you do this before? Do you know how to write like a Gen Z social media writer? No. Right, but how do you feel now when you start to see some of these? Your feet called, they want to glow up. I love this one. Why did the shoe break up with the sock? They were soulless without each other. We rewrote it and told it to act more like dad jokes. Heel, yeah. Totally worth it. Don't let anyone tread on your dreams. These kicks are unbelievable. Okay, are you gonna necessarily copy and paste some of these directly? Maybe. Or did it give your juicy little brain that's not so buried in mental load, did it give you some fun things to start thinking about and some new ways to maybe invigorate your social content? There still has to be a social person writing all of this, editing all of this, managing all of this. That person's job didn't get replaced. But guess what? If that person doesn't know how to use AI tools, that person's job is going to get replaced by someone who does. And that's the thing. It's not going to replace us. But just the same way that there's probably not anybody working in your office who doesn't know how to use a computer, there's probably not going to be many people working in your office down the road that don't know how to use AI and are not comfortable in being able to get it to produce fun things like this to help get your brainstorming and your thinking and your creation started a little more. Now, we're in a church, so I wanted to give a church example today, actually, of some of these unaskable questions. So I said, This is research related, right? I want to think about anything that you might want to research, or think about the fact that, you have your own unique way of seeing the world. And so you might think to put together this and this and this and this and things that other people aren't putting together because of what you see and how there may be pattern there from your lived experience in your life. So you can go to AI now and help it flex those muscles of doing that research. Now, what's up on the screen here? I might have wondered that, but and I'll read this in a second, but if I wanted to find out what's on the screen before, it would have taken me hundreds of hours of manual research to do it. And I know that I don't have time to dig into that inquest of this question, so I wouldn't have ever asked it before, even though I have all the physical tools to have asked it before. But what we put here is create a table of all the times in the Bible that God or godly people relied on or used stars. Table categories: use, context, initiator of star use, outcome, chapter and verse, the full verse in KJV, the full verse in ESV. If the star was instructed to be referenced, then who did the instruction? And then give me the Greek and the Hebrew word that was used in the original text for the word star. How many things are in there? What is that? I don't know. I've lost count. Hey, would you even wonder that before? You might have just started to think about it, but I can't go that deep. I can't figure out that. I can't look into and investigate that per se. But with ChatGPT, you will have an answer in 20 seconds. Now, this is the full table. I created a little closer zoom in for you to just be able to see some of the use, context, initiator, outcome, source. This is too big of a question for it to do it comprehensively in the first pass. So it has to edit itself because that context load is gigantic and it would be producing for the rest of the day. So it's going to first give me an overview kind of look at the answer here, and then I would have to go back and say, great, now make it exhaustive for books 1 through 5, books 5 through 10, books 11 through 16, right? I'm going to give it smaller context so that it creates that in its entirety. And then once I have that in its entirety, I'm putting this all into a spreadsheet, copy-pasting over into a spreadsheet. And then I can data sort and be able to now, what before was just locked in a concordance of being able to go look up chapter verse based on the word star, I can now organize all of that and sort it out and be able to show you all of the times that someone used a star because God spoke to them in prayer. The level of specific data we can get down to. What we have before us is just to really allow ourselves to wonder wider. If you wondered this wide about your business and all the different intersections and topics and things related to your business, what questions would you ask? What patterns might emerge that are there that nobody's been able to see before? No one's been able to measure that pattern before because we didn't have the computational capabilities of AI behind us to be able to sort that. Or we would have had to have some poor soul dedicating their whole life to the answering of that question, right? To get all the way down and figuring out that star question. That one matters to me, so I want to know that answer. I'm enjoying working away in little bits here and there to have it keep filling that out, to get myself that giant table and be able to say with specificity, this is the amount of times that Scripture directed us this way. Our pastors, they couldn't help access and understand even at this level of analysis before, a real-time information and changing. So what are the questions for your business and your life? Where could wondering wider benefit you? I really think we all need to sit with this quote. As a human being, your superpower is creativity. You get new ideas all the time. Your superpower is not data crunching. That's the job of AI. Now, a lot of us may be data crunchers as our job, so that sounds threatening. Don't let it be. No. Your company doesn't want to replace you. Those products won't crunch the data if you aren't there managing it and directing it. What you want to do is figure out how to use AI to data crunch, and then you're using your time to be wondering and engaging it and managing it to produce such entirely different outcomes. Because here's the thing, AI is not going to replace your job, but your position will be replaced by people who know how to use AI. And you can see that is true because there's not a single person in here who is employing a fax machine operator anymore, are they? And did we have fax machine operators at our agencies in the 90s, though? We did. There was a person who ran the fax machine, right? That doesn't exist. That person still has a role, though. So what you really want to think about, guys, what is the moment before us? Our opportunity is how to live as an AI-augmented professional. If you come to the workshop, we're going to talk more about how do I start building AI apprentice teams. Because let's be real specific and careful with our language here. AI is not your CoPilot, okay? It is not your equal. We're not getting into all the biases and things, but from a behavioral perspective, trust me on this, you do not want your teams and you do not want yourself seeing AI as your sentient equal on which you can rely at the same level as a human. You cannot. You are the boss. AI is your apprentice. It's a very smart apprentice, but it's one who makes mistakes. It's one who will give you biased responses, and it's one that you have to boundary and manage and lead. And it's really exciting that we are here learning all of this. You are 5-10 miles down the road just after this one presentation than pretty much anybody in the small business world of AI and understanding these concepts and how you integrate them into your work. So I really want you to think around these things. As an AI-augmented professional, what these tools do is first, they are a tremendous enabler of human ability. Professional development, mark my words, friends, is going to change. It is not going to be so much about learning certain data capabilities in software. We're really going to see that our professional development world focuses more on creating deep creative thinkers, helping you be able to think and wonder wider, helping you recognize strategy and think as a deeper strategist, how to hone your creativity and get richer in being able to come up with, fun and intrigue and so many of the things that we can now do. And then really skills elevation. I talked about this a bit, of how well we develop our command of language, of rhetorics and cognitive linguistics and behavioral dynamics. We are then better able to manage, tell AI what to do, and get even bigger outcomes. And then boundarying that bias. That's really going to be a big skill set of the future, is understanding how to recognize when it is present. Almost every single picture that the AI created for this presentation today was a white man. Every single picture. I had to go back and tell it to stop making everything a man, right? If you go give a presentation and every single one of your images is a white man, that's bias. That is not okay. And there's a lot more of those that are present in this world and in this work. And that's what the engines don't necessarily know yet. So their controllers need to know how to do these things. And then once we have these things in place, why is this so spectacular? What it really enables us to do is improve on so many different levels. Is your life better in many ways because of the internet and connectivity and how that brought our world together? Not questioning if there's downsides. There's always downsides. But really, this is the opportunity before us. We can improve our leadership. We can be more present as leaders. We can model wider thinking and improve our daily life by lessening our load, improve our creation, helping us come up with strategies and content and products, and improve our customer service. And we get more, and we are more successful businesses, not because we cost cut because of AI, but because we use AI to free up so much busy work, and then we create value for ourselves and for our market, and we connect more. So thank you, everyone, for joining me this morning. I'll leave up here. This QR code goes to our latest ebook, The AI-Supported Strategist. I greatly appreciate your support if you are interested in availing yourself of this resource. And then please seek me out. I'm going to be doing a workshop in the business track and going through some more of these tools. But my team and I are so excited to help all of you now that we can help small businesses so much more in your PR campaigns or your engagement strategies, or coming in and teaching you how to create some new systems to get AI going and optimized for your team. So we are very excited to share more about this with you in the next workshop. And thank you all for having me.